Okay, we're now recording, so.
Okay, very good. Would you raise your right hands if you intend to testify? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say I do.
I do.
Thank you. And would you call the roll call for the board?
Yes, Mr. Whitman,
Here?
Ms. Maniaci,
Here.
Mr. Pongonis,
Here.
Ms. Bartley,
Here.
Mr. Slanet.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, very good. And would you review the overview for the hearing?
Yes,
So-
so I will present the staff report and application materials, and then the applicant will sit here at the presenters table, be sworn in, and asked to present their materials. If there are any registered speakers or speakers from the public, they can then approach the podium there, and they'll have 3 minutes to speak each, and then the commissioners will discuss the case and ask any questions if needed.
Very good. Let's see.
Oh.
Let us move along. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting, please?
Motion to approve.
And is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments, additions, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Let's move on with the applications then, please.
Okay, so this is for 340 East Fulton Street, which is located at the northwest corner of Grant Avenue and Fulton Street, and is the site of the Elevate 340 building. We saw this earlier this year, and it's currently under construction. The applicant is seeking commission approval to install 2 wall-mounted exterior now leasing banner signs near the roof line along South Grant Avenue and East Fulton Street, which are the east and south elevations. The banner on the South Grant facade is to be about 6 feet 2 inches by 23 feet 7 inches, and the banner on the East Fulton facade is to be about 3 feet 8 inches by 52 and 7 inches. Submitted materials include elevations, which include sign dimensions and banner sign renderings. If we look at those materials here, you can see the locations of each sign on the elevations there. And then it's a now leasing sign for the building. That's one banner, and the other banner. And then, let's see, seems like, okay. Yeah, and that's what we have.
Great.
Thank you.
Could the applicant please come up, join us? Thank you.
Sir, would you turn that TV off?
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, I am Keegan Christie. I am the development associate with this project.
Great. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Great. Anybody have a problem with these temporary leasing signs? Okay, let's get to the meat of the issue, which the staff pointed out, and I think is correct. What is your timing on this? How long do you?
So our current lease-up period is estimated to be around 9 months.
Okay.
So I was planning for the 6 to 9 month range.
Does 6 months or does 9 months work for you?
Yeah, I think we can make that work, yeah.
Okay, that would mean that if you needed to be there for longer than 9 months, you could come back and you'll join us again.
Yes.
Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Anybody? Good. You want to make a motion?
I just had
to
a
that?
quick question.
Sure.
How are you attaching the banner to the building?
Yeah, so we're still working on that with my construction team just because it's siding. We don't want to cause damage. So we're thinking about a vertical attachment to the top side of the roof where it lays over for most of them. But then a tack strip to do a seal to the siding without causing damage on the bottom side so we're not ripped up that way.
Sounds like a good solution.
I hope so. It wasn't mine.
Okay, other questions, comments?
No. Motion to approve.
There's a motion, is there a second? Okay, other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your patience today.
Of course.
Okay. That one withdrew. Okay.
Easily, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So this next case is for 255 East Main Street, which is located at the southeast corner of East Main Street and South Fifth Street. The applicant is seeking commission approval to construct a 340 square foot storage building in the existing loading dock area within a retaining wall along South Fifth Street. This is an existing surface parking lot. The storage building is to be constructed adjacent to an existing dumpster, and the space is currently being used for additional parking. Materials of the storage building are to consist of board and batten panel siding, and submitted materials include a site plan, renderings, exterior elevations, building sections, existing site photos, and a spec sheet. Let me see if I can pull up the... Okay. Let's see here. Well, I'll just go to the materials. It's probably easier. Okay, so this is the parking lot where it's going to be located. It's going to be just tucked in there next to the dumpster, essentially. So there's some photos of this space right now, where it's going to be located. And then here's an elevation of the storage shed, essentially. And then just cut sheets for the board and batten siding. So after review, the downtown design guidelines recommend the use of durable and high-quality building materials. The guidelines also state that contemporary design and materials are appropriate, but should be compatible with the scale and proportions of the building, as well as its place in the neighboring streetscape, and the proposal is consistent with the downtown design guidelines. Thank you.
Someone here for the applicant, please? Good morning.
Morning.
Could you identify yourself for the record, please?
Edward Nabokowski with Collaborative Architects.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, if so say I do?
I do.
Thank you very much. Metal siding,
Yes.
and what color?
It'll be a dark bronze to match the shape of the building.
And the roof color, same?
It's a gray.
In gray. Questions, comments?
Could you explain, I understand it's a storage building, and it looks like it's segmented into 4 compartments with 4 doors. Can you explain how it will function? And there's also a chain link fence behind it. What is that for additional storage?
The fence is just to keep trash and people from out behind the building there. We didn't want to have to go and try to construct up next to the existing retaining wall just because we didn't want to damage it. The building is in 4 sections because we're going to store medical oxygen tanks in it. Mm-hmm. And they have to be separated just because of the use.
It looks like that's concrete block, so you have a metal siding over concrete block, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Is this intended to be a permanent structure?
Yes.
Do you have any security lighting on it as well, or?
We've got 2 new fixtures in the front. There's also parking lot lighting in place already.
And are the 4 doors, do they match the color of the back
The dark
side?
bronze.
Do you match the bronze color?
Any other questions or comments? Any thoughts?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Is there anything from the audience or anyone? Comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One where there's 4 doors, that makes sense now.
Task.
All right, so this next case is for 415 North Front Street. This is a new Admiral location. So this location is is located at the north end of North Ludlow Street and in between the Arena Crossing apartment buildings. The applicant is seeking commission approval for a new Admiral location at this site. And the site is located at an existing blank brick wall just north of the R Bar restaurant location. And the graphic dimensions would measure 8 feet by 8 feet by 20 feet and 5 inches. And the existing wall spans 265 inches wide. And installed at the site would be a digitally printed black grip vinyl graphic reading "Greetings from CBUS." Submitted materials include an overhead site plan, existing site information, graphic details, renderings, inspiration graphics, an owner's letter, and a limited warranty deed for the site, just to prove ownership there. This is the site. So Nationwide Arena is just south of this. So this is sort of an alleyway that you can meander through. And this is the wall currently. So there's brick with some decorative banding here, and they're wanting this to be a new permanent ad mural location. And then that would be the size of the ad mural. Specifically, right now, they're proposing. These are inspiration photos, but they're proposing this as the first ad mural at the site, just like a greetings from CBUS. And it is commercial copy just because of the different sport teams that are on here. More dimensions of this specific graphic. And then this is just an owner's letter to prove that the owner is authorizing this and that there's permissions from them. So this would be, a permanent new location, and then any ad murals after the Greetings from CBUS ad mural would be staff approvable per the staff approval list and the guidelines for ad murals. And I can look up the location on Google if you'd like as well. But that's up for consideration. And my recommendation is we do one motion to approve, if you all want to, the location, and then a second motion for the Greetings from CBUS ad mural. Thank you.
Okay. Would the applicant please come up, or applicants? Okay, thank you. Morning. Could you identify yourselves for the record, please?
Carly Lamperseek with Nationwide Realty Investors.
Logan Diltz, Day-Night Sign Company.
Would you raise your right hands? Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Great. Quick question. Who's this? Is this one of the tenants driving this, or is this Nationwide the
This is
owner?
actually Nationwide Realty Investors as the owner.
Okay, and the idea is to just get some interest in the alleyway there?
We are celebrating the Arena District's 25th anniversary
Okay.
this year, and so we are just activating the alleyway, celebrating the sports teams, some local iconic graphics, and mimicking, as you saw, some of the other sort of greetings from murals from major cities across the country.
And is your idea that this would change then over time periodically to be updated or changed?
So the current intent is just to celebrate this year's anniversary with the Yes Columbus hashtag, which connects to Experience Columbus's campaign.
Yeah.
We do not have future plans, but I could envision this site, if it works as a photo op, if it does get good engagement from both visitors and residents, I could envision something for the Women's Final Four, maybe in 2027, where we're welcoming
Okay.
teams in this space. It is sort of it's privately owned alleyway there, connecting the Arena District really into the Short North and Convention Center District, so it's just great pedestrian traffic.
And it's pedestrian level, yeah,
That's
obviously. Any questions or comments or anything?
Well, I'm just to, pick up on what you've been talking about. So the intention would be to have something like this, which is tied in to the arena or tied into the district, not just straight advertising.
Correct.
So like, for a product, but for
There, we do have designed advertising spaces elsewhere in the district on that Front Street garage, so that's where we have the designated advertising opportunities. This really is just activating the alleyway with Columbus and Arena District messaging.
I guess my thought about it is, for me, it looks a little bit too large. Like, I think it could still be large, but maybe if it looks like it's within the space a little bit more, I think it would seem more comfortable and more intentional.
Would it help to see the Google Map view, just the scale of that building,
Do that.
potentially?
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, I did look at it on Google Maps, but it would be good to look again.
Be right here.
And then our intent would be to move the planter to the side there so that it would really kind of frame the photo off as well. Really large streetscape.
I guess I would say, looking at it, that needs a little bang in that alley there. It looks like an alley.
And it is the largest, like in doing the Google Maps and me virtually walking down the alley, it does seem to be the largest blank wall span. There are other as well, but not quite as wide.
Okay, that's a comment. Other comments? Anything from the audience? What's the pleasure of the group? Two options, if we can add conditions and change it, or we can approve it as is. I'd like to see somebody put something on the floor and we can go from there.
I would approve it as is.
Okay, there's a motion to approve as is. Is there a second for that? Second. There's a second. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody else?
Is there in the motion or in the notes, is there anything that explains what your intention is for this space? So when when it changes and staff reviews it, they understand that, when you came here, your intention was to keep it as something that is related to the arena district. Is that?
This is staff. So legally, we cannot control content. So it'll just be up to the owner and kind of disseminating, of what advertising they'd like to go there.
Well,
But I cannot say this is allowed, this type of content is allowed and this type of content is not allowed.
And what we're going to jump to, just for what it's worth in a second here, is approval of the image that they're proposing right now, which, as far as I can see, is not simply related to the arena district. It's related to Columbus in general.
Yeah,
as far as I
right.
can read. So,
And that could stay up there, as long as you like, and then you could remove it and the wall could be blank and then when something else pops up, but that'll be up to the owner. And then it's just my job to review it against the guidelines.
I meant more like instead of like something that was related to the
Advertising.
arena or Columbus as opposed to just on
Right.
the street.
yeah.
And that's what you'll have to think about with this being an Admiral location, so.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, though. So
Yeah.
I am going to ask for a vote on it. Now, the motion is to approve this location as submitted on this proposal. So we can vote yay or we can vote nay on this. I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving this as submitted for the size and the location, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
Okay.
I see, Trudy, you voted yes, right?
Yes.
I see 3 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does carry, yeah, because the
So that
majority
motion-
of those seated approved it.
Right,
Yeah.
and that motion carries. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on. You are proposing, and you want us to vote on this graphic that they're proposing then, Belkis, or is that something you propose?
We need to, I'm bringing
first
it
one?
before you all because the text takes up more than 15% of the total area of the Admiral.
Yeah.
And so if it's under 15%, staff can approve it. If it's greater than, then it goes to the commission. So this greetings from CBUS, that text is greater than 15% of the area.
We like Belkis because she keeps us in line here, so good. Okay, so there's the image that is being proposed. Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. Anything from the audience? Okay. I like it too. I think it's interesting,
Can
fun.
I vote on this, even though I denied the?
Well, of course.
Yeah, this is a separate motion entirely, so we'll need a new motion, a new second, and then a new yay or nay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Comments, thoughts? Is there a motion on this then?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Okay, this is on the floor. Questions, comments? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving this image as it is, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That carries
Yep.
4-0.
All four,
And
yep.
1 abstention.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're back. Get some,
Let's do it.
All right. So those were the three applications for action. So we're now moving to our conceptual case, which is 410 South High Street. This is located at the block bounded by East Mound Street to the north, South High Street to the west, East Fulton to the south, and the Franklin County Parking Garage to the east. The site currently holds the former Dorian Commons Park, which opened in 1976, and a municipal building built in 1955. The applicant is seeking commission feedback to demolish the former park site and municipal building, construct a new 8-story Franklin County Municipal Court building. The building will house courtrooms, associated holding and ancillary spaces, the court administration workspace, the Franklin County Clerk, probation offices, court security, a Columbus Police Department workspace, and restricted underground parking. Included in the design is a pedestrian bridge over South High Street to connect the court building directly to the city attorney offices within the 375 South High Street building. This bridge is currently being considered as an add alternative to the project and is subject to budget considerations. The applicant will salvage historical items on the site and will be replacing the mature trees on the site. Proposed materials include aluminum curtain wall, masonry cladding, and precast concrete panels. Submitted materials include existing site context photos, demolition plan, historical inventory, tree replacement plan, the strategy drawings, site plan, floor plans, building sections, elevations, and renderings. And they have a larger package, so I'll let the applicant go through their materials. Overall, the downtown design guidelines state that the downtown district code requires a certificate of appropriateness for demolitions and that a replacement use or plan be approved by the downtown commission. The guidelines note that maximizing the investment potential of a given site is encouraged, but so is preservation of existing building stock. The guidelines encourage the commissioners to consider if demolition would allow for new development, which in their opinion is of greater significance to the character of the surrounding area. For new construction, the guidelines recommend commercial ground floor uses, high-quality, durable materials, lighting that minimizes light spill, transparent, clear storefronts, art along blank walls, landscaping, and rooftop structures that are complementary to the primary building. They also note that structured parking is preferred, but that the exterior design should minimize the monotony of its underlying structure system through wall mass and window openings in variation in color, material, and/or texture. And in summary, the application is generally consistent with the downtown design guidelines, as noted in the basis table below. And as the proposal develops, staff anticipates further details on the exterior lighting. Thank you.
Could the applicant come up and join us, please? Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you identify yourselves for the record, please?
I'm Steve Alvarez, City Columbus Project Manager for Construction Management.
I'm Mark Parrish, architect with AECom, representing ourselves and our partners at Illinois.
Great. Could you raise your right hands? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay. Walk us through here.
Great. So I'm going to set a timer. We'll try to be brief on your behalf here, and then we'll take questions at the end. So very high level, we'll just walk through the site context here. We'll go into our design concept, and then talk a little bit about elevations, some of the renderings, and then really demo here at the front end, and then we'll speak to the bridge connector at the end. And so up front, the existing conditions of the project. We're between Mound and Fulton off of High Street here, directly adjacent to the Franklin County Government Center and the Court of Common Pleas, and really what's been tabbed the Judicial Square here. So as noted, the Dorian Commons Park and the Carnes Building are on the site currently. And then just another view of the site here from a Google aerial to help give scale and context. And then the existing site, Common Pleas on the left, the county parking garage on the upper right. and the government center off of High Street in the lower left there. And then the northeast corner of the site does have a series of historic, kind of commercial scale, 2 to 4 story brick buildings there. And then also on the site, a series of more pedestrian focused elements. We've got a COTA bus stop as well as a bike shelter there, and those will be maintained and reinstalled at the conclusion of the project is the intention. And then the direct site, so the 2 images on the left there are the Dorian Commons Park as it is today, and then on the right there is the Carnes building, which we are proposing to demolish. And so for the demolition plan here, really everything inside of the property line, the red line here, is scheduled for demolition. So as noted, the park, which is the broad portion of the northern 2/3 of the site, and then as noted, the Carnes building on the south end of the site, which directly abuts the county parking garage across the alley there. So there will be a little repair work to make that whole once demolition is complete. And then just an inventory of some of the elements on the site that are scheduled to be saved. Where they will go in the kind of short term is unknown at this time, but there are some historic columns at the upper left there. The cornerstone in the lower left of the existing courthouse from the 1880s that was on the site. A series of dedication plaques, both for the Carnes building, the park itself, and then some smaller elements such as the statue in the upper center there. Then the tree replacement. So as noted, there's a park on the site today. All of those trees will be scheduled to be removed. You'll see in our site plan, we are proposing to add back where possible, and then the remaining portion of that kind of remediation will be taking place through the kind of penalty and fund. And then we've noted this here too. There's a lot of work going on in this little corner of our city here. So the kind of lid projects, the series of lid projects happening on the I-70-71 corridor here. So the Front Street Bridge at the left of the image on left is finishing up right now. And then the High Street Bridge is about to begin construction. And so this is directly adjacent to our site on that southwest corner. And felt it was worth just kind of highlighting that here because it will become a part of the context. And then lastly, just the kind of historical context of the site. There was a bridge connecting the Cairns building to the Franklin County Government Center up until late 2019. And so just kind of noting that here as we talked about a potential connector here at the end of our presentation. And so, big picture, design strategy here. We'll kind of go through the site and just, kind of explore how we've masked the building and why. And so just kind of, resituating us to the aerial here, again, the site and the idea of a kind of, synthesized and cohesive judicial square here. So again, the Court of Common Pleas in the northwest corner of this intersection, the entirety of the Franklin County Government Center in the southwest corner, and then the new municipal court here in that southeast corner, all making up a kind of a cohesive courts complex. And so this series of diagrams have been rotated just for your orientation. So north is now on the south end of the page. And you can click through these. I think what's important here, just first step, is a recognition that there is an existing kind of green space corridor and a series of public spaces off of Mound Street. And so as part of our planning, being kind of sympathetic to that and extending that logic to really make the judicial square here read as kind of a whole. And then also the main entries of those two projects happen off of that green space. And so again, reflecting that planning within our kind of building and our site strategy here.
Could I ask you a question about that?
Absolutely.
So, two things. On the rendering, it looked like the main entry was facing north, but on the elevation, it looked like it was facing west. And I'm wondering if that's something that you're studying, or if the rendering was just more for general concept
Yeah, good question. It is definitely something we've continued to be teasing out as we're designing here. The current intention is to have it on the north side of the entry pavilion there.
Okay, so in other words, what you're saying is you're thinking that the entry would be facing north?
The doors themselves will be facing north, yeah, and with an opening to both the north and the west, recognizing just how this intersection works isn't really kind of elevational, if that makes sense. You've
So
got
you're
people.
saying north and west?
Well, when we get to the renderings, maybe I can walk through it with a little more clarity. But I think the idea there is as an entry experience. So, where the crosswalks feed in, where we have overhead cover, it's a little more kind of agnostic about direction, and we're bringing people in from the north and the west. The west is where the bus stop is, the west is where the ADA ramp is, and so being sensitive to just, how people are moving through the site, but who's moving through the site as well. But the doors themselves within that entry pavilion are intended to be on the north.
On the north?
Yeah.
And I think because you have the handicap ramp on High Street,
Yep.
maybe also think about if that's your only ramp, how somebody coming in and then turning again, how that might be just the flow.
Yep.
Somebody using the ramp again and the
Yeah.
orientation.
Yeah, great.
And then my other question is, it looked like on some of the drawings that the curb line for this is a little bit recessed back, but it looks like you're aligning it with the curb line of where the government center is on Mound Street.
Good question. So we are not adjusting the curb line from its current position anywhere on the three public right-of-way faces, kind of orientations of the site. There's a little bit of adjustment to how we'll call it the curb line. The curb kind of comes and goes on the alley itself, which is being adjusted a little bit. And then there will be a primary cut for ADA kind of van drop-off and access that is a small adjustment to the curb line at the center of the block. But the primary
On the west side.
On the west side, thank you. Yeah, but the primary position of the curb and edge of street, none of that is changing.
On the north.
On the north or on the west or south.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say, on the south, ODOT has its own plans for what is happening to kind of amend Fulton Street as part of that LID project. And so there's a little bit of adjustment there that I think will be worked through between the two.
And does it align with to the west at Government Center or not? On some drawings it looked like it was in alignment, and on others it looked like it wasn't. So I wasn't really clear.
Help me understand which piece are you asking aligns, just so I can be
So-
very specific in my answer.
Here to here, if they are in, or if this is a little more recessed back. It was hard to
Yeah.
see on the different drawings.
Yeah, my understanding is they do align.
Oh, they do
Yeah.
align. Okay, that's great. That was my question, and if they did,
Gotcha.
we were going to align it.
Yeah, so the where it may feel a little different experientially out there is the government center has that pretty significant open area plaza on the way into their pavilion entry there. And so it's all paved one way, and so kind of where the right-of-way starts versus the plaza is purposefully made a little more ambiguous there, but the curbs themselves align.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go.
Just a note here, and we'll kind of see the primary massing, maybe the next slide. You have a much larger footprint on their first two floors. It's just really, heavily public-facing program in support of the courts. And then the next slide will show you the actual stack that is primarily, courtrooms themselves will be atop that podium. And then what we've done is we've essentially offset and rotated that court's mass to really reinforce a pedestrian scale and reinforce an existing scale of this kind of 2 to 3 story podium of about 35 to 40 feet that exists really at all corners of the intersection here. And so, what you end up here, you can see kind of the final aggregated massing here is a pretty strong podium tower configuration. And then when we go to the next slide here, you'll see the reinforcing of that podium, that pedestrian, that kind of urban scale that really, synthesizes and ties together the entire intersection as kind of one kind of serial thought. And then the buildings above that obviously have various scales from, 4 total stories to I think 27. And then the site itself, again, the aerial, we can go to the next slide. This image is rotated 90 degrees counterclockwise, so north is at the left. Things to highlight here, as noted, that kind of corner entry at the northwest corner, the kind of reinforcement of a soft green buffer at the whole north edge tying into that similar kind of green space at the adjacent properties. Just going around maybe clockwise, the east end of the building, the alley condition. So we have a ramp into a secure sally port zone, which is essentially a secure vestibule. And then on the southeast corner is the loading and egress of that sally port zone. And then off of the alley, which is elevated relative to that loading zone, there's a controlled alley currently. It'll continue to be a controlled alley going forward. And there is some staff parking that is intended to be located in that alley. And currently the thought there is that would be for the police. And then on the south end of the site, there is a primary entry into the secure parking, which is below grade. It's below grade on the backside off the alley. The building sits on a slope, and so we're essentially partially submerged in that basement level. And then the south and west sides are primarily a more city standard approach to the landscape. So the granite curbing, trees, a bit more hardscape oriented. And then, as noted, the ADA parking stall at the kind of south end of the site there, pull in. Then the floor plans themselves. So basement level, partially submerged. Again, the alley we just walked through. This floor is primarily secure parking, security, and then building services. And then the second floor here, this is the first and second floor here are in yellow is the primary public spaces. So the public lobby, we have some high traffic courts on this floor.
And you say second level, but that's basically ground level. Then, right?
Yeah, this is level one, ground level,
Right.
exactly. Yep, the basement level is really submerged and kind of back a house there at the alley and kind of out of the public view to a large degree. And so these first two floors are really kind of the highest touch public spaces with a bunch of publicly accessible program that's really courts support. And then as we go up through the building, by the time we get to level 3 and then the tower stack, you can see this is starting to resolve into a public concourse or corridor on the west face of the building off of High. And then primarily courts and court support off of that. So if we go one more slide, you'll see a typical courts floor. And on those floors, you have essentially admin north and south to support the courts, and then the courts themselves in the meat of the building there. And then we do have a mechanical penthouse atop that. And the building sections, I think what you're seeing here is, really the heavier program of the first 2 to 3 floors here in terms of court support and public-facing program, and then the courts within the tower itself. Similar idea here to show that, and the bridge connector beyond. And the elevations here, so the intention here is to have a building that reads civic, but also, reflects the kind of progressive ideals of the court system here, and then also has a weightiness or robustness to it that ensures it's got a timelessness to it. You can see that kind of 2-story podium read there off of High Street in the kind of front end of the elevation here. And then what we have done is really emphasize that public landing. So if you remember from the plans, the public core is oriented more to the north end of the building, and so you come up to a more gracious glass, essentially elevator landing, and then move down the corridor to the courts.
Will that be on the inside 3 stories tall then?
It'll be floor to floor, each floor, but it'll just be more heavily fenestrated, so a lot more daylight glass.
So from the
that landing.
so from the outside, you'll see 3 floors
From
of
the
glass, but when you walk inside, it'll just be a 1-floor ceiling. Is that right?
it on each court's floor, is that the question?
No, when you walk in,
The main lobby will be a double height lobby at the main
Two
entrance.
floors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I think what you see here is because we have such varied program, our approach to articulation buys us a little bit of flexibility to work with the ever-changing program floor to floor. And then off of the east elevation, which we'll see next, when you see, well, north and south are very similar. And then the east elevation is quite a bit glassier in terms of the overall composition, given that's the public concourse. And then off of the east end here, the alley condition, it's a bit more opaque, given this is a more secure piece of the program and just needs a lot less daylight. Then the renderings themselves, I think this maybe answers the question about the entry itself, and then the double height volume. So you can see in the kind of front end of the image there, a soft set of steps up to kind of a public landing at that part of that entry. The double height glass space beyond. We're anticipating either the court seal or maybe some public art, something really kind of anchoring that entry sequence off of the west-facing wall, the left wall in that entry sequence. And then above, you can see what I was speaking to, that kind of landing floor to floor in the glassier piece there. And then the public concourse would be on the right half of the tower image above. And then a similar view from the Government Center Plaza there, just really highlighting the podium here and the idea of a kind of consistent, more pedestrian scaled experience there to really kind of hold the edge of the entire kind of urban context there, and then the tower depressed a bit off of the street. And then I think lastly, important here, the south end of the site, this really is in many ways, kind of a gateway moment. So we've got the 7071 corridor, the neighborhoods to the south, Brewery District and German Village are obviously a much different kind of development density. And so the intention here was by creating that two-story podium condition and pulling the tower back, we're able to just kind of mediate between those two development patterns a little bit and just give a softer transition down to those neighborhoods. And then on the southeast corner here, so you can see the alley, the service entry, the parking entry on the podium corner there, and then the subtly more opaque articulation of the east side of the building. And then lastly, back to Mount Street here, so a kind of true north elevation, and just understanding that soft greenscape buffer on that north edge of the right-of-way there and the tower above. And then the last piece of the presentation here is the bridge connector. And so, just want to reiterate up front, this is a really important piece of the project. The building is not currently intended to house all departments that really make up the whole functioning of the court. And so currently the city attorneys will maintain their presence across the street. And so the bridge connector is really important just for courts functioning, just to ensure that the courts can work through the docket cleanly, swiftly, and the staff will have to continually go through security on both sides of the street as they move between facilities. The feeling is this is a really important piece of just the overall court's functioning. And so, the idea here is coming in on the third floor, making sure that this is elevated enough to where it's not creating any sort of kind of impediment to moving into the city here, while also celebrating this a bit as a kind of a gateway opportunity. Coming from German Village, coming from the Brewery District, coming off of 7071 and moving into the heart of downtown here. And then the intention here is just a relatively simple, transparent bridge here with a stair and an elevator coming down on the west side of High Street here, kind of in the corner adjacent to the existing entry pavilion of the Government Center.
And that would be inside the Government Center building?
It will egress into the Government Center behind the security lines.
So you're not building a new structure to put the stairway in?
Well, the stair
Within
the stair and the elevator actually sit outside of the current footprint, but you will discharge into the existing footprint of the Government Center. Does that make
So
sense?
you'll have a new building surface on the where that comes down?
Yeah,
in front of the
if you see the tower to the left, there's a vertical seam where we intend to infill a small portion where the elevator and the stair is to match.
And then you'll come back with further details on that?
Yeah.
Then, right? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
By the way, my thought on this bridge, and, you know, as a policy, we discourage these things. I would say, and I've voted for these over the years, there seem to be certain places where they seem to make sense. And I would be in that camp on this one. But I think it needs to be nice. It needs to be high quality. The one that was there before was kind of perfunctory. And, you know, this is a very interesting space, and it has kind of evolved over time here. And so I, just as a thought, that it should be well done and interesting. Not too much, really, but kind of just right.
I agree with that, and I think that, you know, the form you're working with and the idea of the slats is good and has a lot of potential, but I'm wondering if you could also, and I'm not really quite sure what those materials are, if that's metal, but like in your inspirational drawings, there were the things that you were attracted to had a lightness and a translucency and a transparency to them. And maybe you can work with this concept, but maybe bring that into this so that you still have that design, but maybe it is more working with glass or working, you know, with the lighter materials, and then it could really, you know, might be more of a striking gateway element.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I think the current intention was to really play off of light and color in a subtle way. I think you kind of picked up on that. And then potentially the current thinking is they would be some sort of metal slat, but to also potentially reinforce the idea of old and new and coming together. And so the kind of copper, you know, we wouldn't necessarily use copper, but the copper as kind of a precedent was reinforcing that maybe one material, you know, kind of looks and feels multiple ways over time, and there might be a conceptual story to tell there between old and new and the connection there, and reinforce that through the material. But all with the intention of I think to your point, creating a kind of warm, inviting experience as you move through this, and also something that is a bit softer in terms of its kind of public, kind of presentation, is not just, kind of a truss, so to speak, right?
And then I think too, and I think we all fall in this trap to think about, well, if something, and I'm not saying this is, but like thinking like, okay, this might be a way of I don't know, like a very popular way of doing things now, but will that stand the test of time? Will it have a timeless quality or look like, oh, that's circa, 2025?
For sure.
So thinking about that too when you're selecting what you do with the bridge.
Yep. Yeah, great comment.
Good. Anything else to discuss? If you're done, I'd like you to have, just give us your thoughts on materials.
Yeah, I mean, the floor is yours at this point. Feel free to.
Well, go ahead. So tell us what's your vision for the.
Yeah, so at this point in the process, the assumption is curtain wall where the primary fenestration or windows are, the more opaque surfaces. The current thinking is a precast. We are still studying, but potentially some stone. But I would say precast is the very likely solution there.
And that's because you like it from a design standpoint, or?
There's a lot of reasons to go into that. Part of it is on the construction end. Part of it is just a kind of design solution. Part of it is budget. I mean, it's an encapsulation of a lot of thinking and just prioritization. Durability, all those elements play into it. Yeah, and then some secondary elements. Soffit, we're still looking at that, but likely to be something warm, either a wood or a kind of warm metal. And then just kind of tweaking the palette and giving it a little bit of a lift here and there. But I think to your previous point, really trying to put something forward that is timeless and will kind of last. And so durability, but also just aesthetic timelessness.
Questions, comments?
I have just.
By the way, this, just to remind everybody, this is a conceptual discussion here. So
I just had a few really quick things that maybe as you develop the project to think about. The first is, first of all, I love the overall concept and what you're doing. The first thing is maybe just study the relationship of the first two levels and the third level going up, because I definitely understand and agree with the idea of, you're creating that podium and then you're setting it back. But to me, it looks like there's a lot of roof space over that second level, on the west facade, but also on the south.
Yep.
So maybe just think about that and, if that's how you want it to be, or maybe you want to tweak it a little bit, or maybe tweak it so you can create a little bit more space on the ground level, but maybe just study those proportions and make sure that you're using the space in the best way. And then the other thing is, it looks like, which is a great idea, being similar in some ways to the Court of Common Pleas building and the government center, but then also thinking, how do I make this unique as well, but still in the vocabulary? And I definitely see you doing that, but maybe as you develop it, some more details of what glazing color and what textures would I be using on those panels and on that masonry. And then the third thing is with the original building, the Carnes building, are you thinking of a HABS report, or are you thinking, had you originally, before you were thinking of demo, had you thought about keeping that building? Can you talk a little bit about that building, and if HRC had anything to say about that building, and what your thoughts were about that existing building? Your decision, to demo.
Good question, and I'll let Steve add anything to here. What I will say that at a very high level, quite a bit of study was done to see if it was compatible with the program going forward for the courts, and if it could be incorporated into the project. I think the primary challenges were, frankly, just the floor to floor of the building was going to be problematic. The actual just kind of base footprint, structural bays were going to be problematic to support some of the court's functioning. And then also its position on the site made it very challenging to, I think we even looked at keeping it as a part of the program and building a building adjacent to it. And just given its footprint, it didn't leave enough of the site to make the court's footprint itself work. With all of the kind of ancillary program it needs in terms of just security and kind of holding and all the things that are kind of deeply embedded into kind of proper courts functioning in the year 2025.
When was that building built?
It was built in 1955, I believe. I'm looking at Lou. Did I get that right? 1955. Yeah.
And also, as we did spend some time investigating and walking through the building and seeing how it worked, but when as Mark was saying, when you put the building that we wanted to put next to it, it shrunk the footprint, which shot it up, made it much taller, which then increased our budget by, I think, $20 million to keep it building.
What's the square footage of this building? Do you know offhand?
The overall proposed building?
The new building, yeah.
It's about
335,
340, yeah, 340,000.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Comments?
And maybe just for context, it's a similar footprint to the Common Pleas building across the street, just a story taller. So
Is it?
if that helps, just in terms of overall kind of scale.
Drawing to it looks bigger than that, actually.
Pretty similar, yeah.
I have a couple comments. One is, it seems that you're looking at Mountain Street, and that streetscape feels right. I can understand the Fulton streetscape. When I get to the High Street streetscape, it doesn't feel as robust.
Yeah.
Kind of feels almost minimalistic. I can tell that the spacing of the trees are not even conforming with the downtown streetscape standards.
Yep.
And I'm questioning the bus stop location and coordinating that with CODA. Same thing with the bike parking. Like, those locations don't feel right to me right now, at least. And then one kind of like, I don't know where this comes from, but thinking about the public drop-off, the ADA access and that drop-off like right underneath the potential connector, does that make sense there?
Yeah, it's a good question.
So High Street, this seems like there's a lot of things that are going to happen on that street, and there's not a streetscape response to those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fair question. So, I'll take those in order. I think the challenge here is, and you kind of hit on it, is there are a lot of existing pieces of program and/or kind of connected pieces of infrastructure, the bike shelter, the CODA station, that are currently on the site and need to be maintained on the site. And they do have their own kind of requirements, generally speaking, about where they exist within that right of way. What we have attempted to do in terms of your comment about the city standard for the kind of street planters and the granite curbing there is, I believe we've actually gone beyond the city standard there to try to get as many planters as we can on that right of way. And then the ADA stall, I mean, I think we could adjust that. I think that's a really good point. And the bridge has kind of evolved over time in terms of its location. And so I think that's something we could absolutely look at adjusting to maybe make those a bit more kind of sympathetic to each other.
Could that bike rack go in front of the garage to the east? Doesn't that garage have a pretty big right-of-way setback?
Yeah, the garage, it would be hard to see there, but the upper left corner of the garage does have a roughly 30-foot overhang at level 1 and 2, where there is the public right-of-way with the sidewalk, and then there is a kind of garden space under the overhanging parking garage there. It's certainly something we could look into proposing.
Yeah, I think I drive past this thing every morning, and this is a very complicated intersection for all sorts of mobility. I think Tony's right. Like, if there are things that we can simplify here, both in function and aesthetic, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a little question. It looks like you've got some planting around the bridge where it comes off the court building on the east side of the street there. Is that some kind of a roof?
Yeah, so
is it just something to look at? Is it something people can go out onto? And is it just confined to that area on either side of the bridge? Or tell us about that a little bit.
If you maybe go back to the plans, might be easiest to speak through it briefly. So if we go to the level 3 plan, I can point this out maybe more effectively. So right there is great. So yep, you can see where the bridge is coming over at level 3 there, and then you can see the white, the kind of outline there, and the white roof below. So that is the kind of
is
level.
It resting on that roof?
It is essentially resting on that roof. So that's the level 3 floor, the level 2 roof. Right now, and if you can zoom out a little bit there, and we're still working through the details there, but right now we are intending to include a green roof over a pretty significant portion of this roof. So we're still dialing what that number is. But the intention is that we could potentially aggregate and place some of that around the bridge and make that landing sequence experientially really tied together so it's as rich as possible. So it's not just a bridge connection, it's an opportunity to kind of gauge nature for a brief moment. Again, maybe with the playfulness of color and light, just have that be kind of a moment of kind of pause in an otherwise pretty stressful, at times stressful environment. So,
and with the idea that that's something visible from the street then? Well,
I think that's possible. We've got to tease that out and just what the kind of density of planting is there, but I think it's possible. Right now, the assumption is it's probably not an extensive roof. Or I'm thinking that right. Yeah. Jeff knows this. Yeah. Not a deep soil, more of kind of a sedum, lightweight tray sort of system.
Okay. I just have a question. So between Mound Street and Main Street,
yep,
there is that a court building as well?
So between, let me see if we can go to the aerial. Might be the easiest. First 2 or 3 pages there.
Sorry, it froze.
Maybe you can keep going, and I'll try to answer the question while we're working through it.
You have Mound Street. You have government offices here.
Yep.
You have a courthouse building here.
Yep.
And then you have green space on Main
Street
and High. Was there ever any consideration, since that was just green space, to do something this concept right next to the courthouse?
So
Because I'm just looking at, you're looking at High Street and Fulton, where it's just a question.
Yeah.
Because that's green space that doesn't necessarily have to look at the historic building and building vertically from there. Was a consideration of looking at the green space that's at High and Main and building up from there for what you are proposing? It's just a question.
So let me rephrase just so I make sure I'm understanding. The open site north of Common Pleas, which is just off the page. The
Right.
question is, did we look at placing this facility on that site?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll defer to Steve on that.
Well, so that is county owned, and I think it was more, we have our own property that we're going to purchase, and the expansion for the Common Pleas, that's their expansion area for that
Okay.
building.
So it's more of a city, county. So is it city property that you're expanding on currently?
Where our new proposed building is city owned.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And
And
so
I'm just-
I think the long-term likelihood is that both sites will have some form
Okay.
of courts program on them. over
Okay,
time.
and I'm just looking at, the bridge,
Yeah.
it's right in close proximity, well, contiguous to, that's why I'm asking if there was consideration since it's court. Was that a consideration when you're looking at this initially?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, and it's a great question. What I would maybe layer in there is, and I did this before I ever worked on courts as well. I hear court and it all sounds similar, right? And that means a lot of different things. And there's a lot of program to support our courts that the public doesn't always see. And so, for instance, the proximity here to all of the office space within the existing government center. And all of the departments that are currently housed there that support all these courts is a really important adjacency and connection. And does that make sense? And so it's sometimes easy to go, well, it's all kind of courts or we're close. I think where we are is on this proposed site is really important for the overall kind of efficiency
Okay.
of the municipal court and the functioning thereof. Yeah.
Okay. Thoughts? How does everybody react? Because that's what we're talking about today conceptually. Anything?
I just have one final comment. I know the bridge is an unfortunate reality of the project. I would just ask that it's not a dark sprite through this, flying through the right of way there. That, I think it's lower. I think, the great benefit of the last one was it was higher.
Yeah.
And I recognize why it's here. That makes all the sense in the world. I would just ask that it's not dark.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think generally this seems like a solid program, good thinking. I think, the fact that we're activating that intersection at Justice Square, as we call it, I think that's great. So,
Yeah. And on the bridge, I would add, I think the city, I'm doing this from memory, so I apologize if I get it close, but maybe not exact. I think 17 feet is the required clearance within the code. And we worked really hard to actually get that to land at level 3 to give us over 35 feet clear to just resolve some of that kind of visual cutoff and just, kind of this threshold experience. Yeah.
I hope so.
Pretty much okay. Okay, any other thoughts, then?
I guess my comment is I think that it's a very strong conceptual design with lots of wonderful potential, and maybe just study again, like other people were talking about that high streetscape, and also if you have handicap accessibility on Mound Street, if you do, or if you don't, how that might be integrated in, and also just how to give the building its own unique character and it reinforce the transparency, the connectiveness on the street and also with the other judicial buildings on that square.
And I would say I like it too. I think with materials, these are important buildings. I would encourage you, maybe this goes to Steve, to make sure you're kind of do it right. I mean, I like to think of these things, and early on, they came to talk to me way back when about the Common Police Court building, and I said, by the way, what they were doing is they were going out of a building that had been there for 25 years. You remember that building on the southwest corner, the black cube there?
Yeah.
To me, that is just a screaming disaster. I mean, that whole idea, it's just wasteful. I think we should be looking at it for very important buildings like this, 100-year buildings plus. And so that means a lot of things. I mean, it has to be designed so it doesn't become obsolete. There was an obsolescence element in that. Of course, they had asbestos. It just, you can count the waste. And frankly, it didn't fit with other things. It wasn't a great, attractive building. I didn't just encourage you to aspire to kind of a great building. So, for example, if you're looking at materials, put some extra money into the materials, the common spaces, the public spaces, the street levels, and I think we should go that way. And I know you say, oh, we make a switch and it's $20 million. Yeah, that's a lot of money. But over the course of time, maybe we get something out of that kind of thing. And that's what I'd like to encourage you to, and I know you don't make all the total final decisions and all that, and everybody's under the gun and trying to save money. But I think we should aspire to, and this is by the way, this is about as visible as you get. And so I like the direction you're heading. That would just be my general thought without throwing a specific at you. Good. Any other comments or thoughts? Anything from the audience, or all you guys are in the same group here? So
Yeah.
okay. Thank you very much for coming in. Look forward to seeing. Now, let me ask you this. So, do we need any action, or you're not asking? Okay. So
No,
at some
just
point in
feedback.
time, Carnes
Yeah.
comes down. I had the same question about the Carnes building, and I kind of get it. Frankly, it's not totally beautiful to look at. I'll tell you what was the great change for this whole town was the old courthouse building that was on the southwest or southeast corner there. That was a building that in a community like this should have been kept. I don't know if anybody remembers that. You kid? You
No.
you remember that?
I've only seen pictures.
I actually remember it. So, thanks very much for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience today.
Do we have anything else?
No, just the staff-approved applications, motion to approve them into the formal record.
Any questions on the staff-approved applications?
Look for approval.
Second? Is there a second? Okay. There's a second. All those in favor? Aye. Yep, you approved, Feltus? Thank
Yep.
you. You did a great job on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, appreciate everyone's patience and time today and on multiple fronts, so thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Thank you.
All good. Good work. Manageable.